Hi, this is Kevin. Welcome to my tutorial for the user stories practice assignment. In the current semester, these are the instructions for the user stories practice assignment. Uh, we're going to pick two user stories that we listed on our a couple of assignments ago, we created a backlog. Okay, let me just find the backlog. Okay, so here's the backlog that I created for the um, example that I do in the tutorials. So the two stories that I'm going to do is I'm going to do this record attendance at a class meeting and generate a report of students' attendance. Okay, so these are two key user stories from my example project, and I think what makes these kind of good to do, for me to do and for you to see is one of these I've already created a use case specification for. So I've already thought about it a lot, and I'm going to kind of translating my thinking that's already been documented uh, into a new format. The second one I've never really done, okay, or I haven't done in a lot of years. So I'm going to do one that I'm kind of translating from um, the more waterfall oriented use case approach and one that I'm kind of going to be doing from scratch. And if you go back and look at what you're going to be doing in your assignment, one of them that you're going to be doing for the iSchool web store is pick order. Now, you have created a use case specification for that. And I want you to choose any other user story, uh, kind of like I did from the example project. Okay, so let's look at what I'm starting from. Okay. Um, uh, Again, the first one that I'm going to do is this record attendance at a class meeting. And the copy of the use case specification that I already have, yeah, it's a couple of years out of date. And I was calling it log attendance at that time, but it's the same function. So it's going to be the same user story. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to look at it. So the brief description says the student logs her attendance at a particular class meeting in the attendance system. Okay, I have a basic flow. The student signals that she wishes to log attendance. The system, it displays a list of classes in which the student is registered. The student selects the class in which they want to log attendance. The system requests the class meeting password. The student enters the class meeting password. The system that confirms that the student has successfully logged attendance, and the use case ends. So I ought to be able to document that in a user story. And I've got, in terms of alternative flows, I've got student cancels logging, student not registered for any classes, student can't find desired class, student enters an incorrect class meeting password, student attempts to log attendance outside of permitted hours. So one of the questions that I'm going to have is, because user stories are so much more lightweight, I'm probably not going to document all those things in my user story. So it's going to be a matter of kind of picking and choosing. Okay, so let's see how I pick and choose. All right, so having taken a peek at that, let's look at my user story for the record attendance at a class meeting. I've updated the name, but it's still the same story, okay? And I'm using the template that I gave out in the current semester. This is a template that I downloaded from aha.io. I was glad to get it. I've been using a different tool for documenting user stories before. I think I'm going to be using yet another tool soon because I didn't really like this one a lot. But it's kind of nice that we're all going to have the same format. One thing is, I'm not sure I want this to say user story template anymore. It probably should just say user story up top, right? And then I filled in the title. Okay, this is the same title that I had on the backlog. There's a place to put the priority. I guess I do have a priority from the backlog. I had priority 1. So let's just try to put a 1 over here somewhere. And one problem that I have with this a particular template is it's kind of bulky when you go to click on it to type. Certainly for a free template, it's not bad, but for a high quality workplace product, it's maybe a little bit short. Oh, okay, so here's the classic user story parts. As a, I want to, so that I can. So I took the information that I had on this use case specification again. This is the one that I had been calling at least a couple of years ago. I called this log attendance. And I guess this particular incarnation of the use case specification came from 2016, so it's a little bit out of date. But here's what I was able to pull out of it. As a student, I want to record my attendance at a class meeting so that I can receive proper credit for having attended the class meeting. Now, one of the things I like about this is that level of explaining the intent of the user story was maybe not all there in my use case specification. This so that I can. What am I trying to achieve? It was implicit in the last version of this that I did. It wasn't the user story version, but it's a lot more explicit here. I like that a lot. Okay, so that's the classic user story text. If you were taking the classic approach that you were documenting this on an index card, well, this would be on the front of the index card. You'd have the title, probably the priority, and the estimate at the top. You'd have the as I want and so that I can stuff on the front of the index card, and then you would flip it over and you would put acceptance criteria. One thing that I really liked about this template when I got my hands on it is it started with a given. And what I like is that the given is kind of like the preconditions of use cases. You know, we can kind of say, what are the assumptions we need to start the user story? Okay. So I decided that I'm going to use that, at least these days, in order to express the fact that you need to be logged in as a student in order to run the user story. So I don't think that I had ever seen a given in this context before, but I think it's pretty powerful. I've decided that I'm going to have either 0 or 1 given per the acceptance criteria for a user story. And then I'm going to have a lot of when-then pairs. Okay? So here are the when-then pairs that I was able to distill primarily out of the basic flow of the use case specification. So I say, when I signal that I wish to record attendance, then I see a list of class meetings for which I can record attendance. And then my next one, when I select the class meeting for which I wish to record attendance, then I receive a prompt to enter the class meeting password. When I enter the class meeting password, then I receive confirmation that I received credit in the system for attending the class meeting. That's it. Okay, so I've got a bunch of things kind of left over from my more detailed use case specification. And I kind of angsted over whether I should find a home for them in the acceptance criteria of the user story. Some things that I had here that I thought were kind of interesting were some of my alternative flow things, like student council's logging. Well, it just says that the student can stop. I decided I wasn't going to put that into a when then. If I'm not registered for any classes, again, I think this is a lot. I think that these kind of alternative scenarios are easier to express and document in alternative flows in the use case specification than they are to document in a user story. Would it be wrong for me to translate all them into yet more when-thens? I would say I'm not sure. Okay, there's no perfect answer to that, okay? One might say, well, Kevin, you've already done the thinking and you need a place to document it. So I would say, well, if I'm going to document it somewhere, it's going to be in the when-thens in the acceptance criteria. Or the other possibility is that we're just going to say that, well, that's just not the things that we express in a user story, so we're going to leave them out. Okay? For right now, in terms of its simplicity, I'm going to leave them out. I just want to point out, though, that when the Agile team goes to implement the user story, they definitely are going to have to do some of this kind of thinking. Okay? Some of this alternative flow kind of thinking. It certainly is going to be reflected in the product that they create. Okay? But it's probably true that Agile teams don't document every aspect of the requirements for their product in their user story. Some of them are just embodied in the product that they create. So for right now, I'm going to say that I'm comfortable that whereas I think the team is going to implement this kind of alternate flow logic into the product, at this point I'm just going to hold off and not include it formally in the user story. Okay? So pretty much I've got less here than I had in the use case version of this analysis and design, the one for record attendance at a class meeting. And that's okay. These are two separate approaches, and they're going to have things in common, and they're going to be things that are going to be different. Okay? All right, so I've got that. Again, I kind of like the template, but the template's kind of testy, and you have to click on it several times to get its attention and you pull things around, and then you start to see like the blue background and things like that. Um, Again, I don't think this is absolutely perfect, so but it's a nice kind of a next thing for us to use in this course until we find a better one. Okay, so that's record attendance. Let's look at the other user story that I'm going to do as an example. And this one is for another item from the backlog. Generate report of students' attendance. Okay, let's just go to the backlog and look at where that is. Okay, we'll make this a little bigger so we can read it. And that's the second one. I said looks like it's priority 3. Okay. I picked it because it was easy to understand. So I don't have the priority here yet. Let's just add it. Priority 3. Okay, that's good. I don't have an estimate. I think you probably want to write the user story before you estimate it, right? So it's entirely possible that you might not have a priority or an estimate for a user story that you're writing up for the first time. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. As a student, I want to generate a report of my attendance in a particular course so that I can estimate what effect my attendance might have on my course grade. Okay. And again, if I had a use case specification for this, I don't think that I would have had the third part. I would have had the actor, I would have had the action, but I wouldn't have the motivation. So I think this adds a lot. I like that. Okay. So let's go down and look at the acceptance criteria. I thought it was good to use the given again. Almost all of these user stories are going to have some kind of state of the system that you have to get into before you use the functionality, like logging in a certain role. So this is a good use for the given. So I start out, given that I'm logged into the student attendance system as a student, and then I've got 2 when-thens. When I indicate that I want to generate an attendance report for a course, then I see a list of courses for which a report may be generated. And then the next one, when I select a course for which I want a report to be generated, then I see the report, which contains a list of class meetings to date, an indication of whether I was present or absent at each meeting, and total present and absent counts to date. Now, again, there's a lot of information in my then, okay? At some point, I've got to document what the report's for, what's on the report, okay? It's not too long-winded to describe the nature of the output, okay? And probably, the nature of the end output should be consistent with this so that I can up here in the user story proper, okay? Now, can I think of some things that would have been documented as kind of alternate flows if we were taking a use case approach? Yeah, I probably can. I don't really see anything at this point that I want to document with a when-then. You certainly are able to look at this. You're able to get the gist of the story. You have 2 acceptance criteria. I think that's a good start. Okay, so that's it. I'm just going to take these. Again, it's not user story template. It's a user story. Probably should change that in the template. I think so. And I'm going to save that. So I'm going to turn these, what I would do from here would be make sure they're properly named. Mine's already named uh, well. And then I would turn them into PDFs, and I would put them in the right directories and zip them up and hand in the assignment. Okay. In terms of how you would use these on the job, well, you would keep a collection of these either in a physical place in the room where the team works, or you'd use some kind of electronic medium to put them in a place where you're all able to access them. I think I mentioned that students who have done agile projects in my classes in the past have used things like Jira software to track their projects, and there's a place to document user stories in that. I'm looking at some alternatives to that one, but there's there's a whole lot of products that have a home for this kind of information about user stories, and these products are used by agile teams. And I don't really mean to recommend one over the other. Um, the agile approach to this is pretty simple. Um, you can see that the content here is pretty modest, and there are a lot of places where you could keep it as a repository. Okay, so that's it. Your assignment is going to be able to do this for um, the iSchool web store project, and good luck on that, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.